All right, welcome back to another edition of the Margin Matters Minute. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jason Brown, and today we are talking about the real cost of college. Now, I'm sitting here on the campus of Kennesaw State University, my alma mater, where I actually earned not one but two debt-free degrees. And the topic that we're talking about today is actually all the expenses that you should expect to pay when you go to college. Now, the information that I'm also sharing can be found in my new book, It Is Possible, How I Earned Two Debt-Free Degrees and How You Can Too. So I'll link that in the description below if you want to check out the book. But this is actually from one of the chapters in my book that I wanted to share this information with you guys today. So we're going to kind of break it down. The biggest thing with the college expenses is that I think people run into trouble is they just look at like the tuition costs, right? So what is the tuition cost? Can I afford it? How much is it going to be per semester or per year? And you don't really think about all the other costs that surround the expenses. So let's go through each one here today in this video and just kind of break it down to see what you guys can expect if you are planning to go to college. So the first thing, like we just said, tuition and fees. So there's not just tuition, there's fees as well. There's all these different fees that go with tuition. There's athletic fees, there's student fees, there's activity fees, there's parking fees. All these fees are built into your tuition, and you might not realize that until maybe you get an itemized breakdown of where all that money is going, but all these fees are a part of your tuition. So according to the College Board, which is a website that puts out statistics on college costs, they said for the 2017-2018 school year, the average cost per year for private colleges was just under $35,000 a year, and for state public colleges about $25,000, a little over $25,000, if you attended a public state university. So you can see there's a significant cost. So breaking it down even further, some more costs and fees that you're going to be expected to pay are housing and meals, right? So we break it down. A lot of people call that room and board, but it's really, food, all your food expenses, rent. Are you staying in an on-campus apartment, or are you staying maybe in an off-campus apartment? Maybe you're an athlete and your college provides an athletic dorm. There's dorms, there's apartments on campus and off, right? So we're going to take a look at that. And according to this, the same College Board report for the same school year, 2017-2018, it said $10,800 per year for a four-year public school you would expect to pay for housing and meals. Now, of course, this report's from several years ago, so I would go ahead and assume with inflation, these costs are going to be a little bit more in today's society, right? So then we have private schools. The private school cost for room and board a few years back was a little over $12,000. So this is something that you need to plan for on top of your annual tuition and fees. So you can see how this is starting to add up and how you need to really plan ahead for it. So the next thing, of course, we all know, I've been a student twice, everybody gripes about books. The cost of books have gotten really, really insane. So books and school supplies. The average cost of books and school supplies per year is going to be somewhere around $1,250, according to several published reports. Now, times have changed. Back in my undergrad days, several decades ago, I'll admit, you had to buy the book. You were basically forced. It was a monopoly. It was a racket. You had to buy the book that they told you to buy. There was never a used book. You had to buy the brand new book, spend full price, and then you would sell it back and get maybe 10% of what. So it was a huge scam. I'll just say, nowadays, with the advent of the internet and all the digital options that you have, used options, you can buy used books on Amazon, eBay, there's Chegg, there's a lot of websites that you can get used options. And then there's also the option to rent books. So you can just rent a book for a semester. What I did when I was in grad school just a few years ago, so I went through this, and I would price compare the rental cost versus the actual buying of the book. And for me, for all the books that I needed for my master's program, it actually came out better for me to buy the used book than to rent the book, because what happened was the used book price was most of the time the same price to rent the book for a semester, but the advantage of buying the used book would be that I could actually sell the used book back. So my goal was, let's say I bought a used book for 50 bucks, or I could maybe rent it for $45. Well, let me just go ahead and buy the used book for 50 bucks and then maybe sell it back. Hopefully, I would always hope for half my money back. So maybe I could sell that back on a used platform, Amazon or eBay or some of these other websites, and hope to get 25 bucks back. So that was the strategy that I used, and it worked out pretty well. But it just depends on the book and your options that you have for that. So the next cost that we want to look at, that you want to make sure that you plan for as part of your college expenses, is personal and transportation expenses. Now this is going to be different for your situation. According to some of these published reports, you're going to have parking. You're going to have to pay for parking. Like I mentioned a second ago, that's going to be part of your tuition and fees. You're going to have a parking fee. Most schools charge per semester. Some schools it's going to be 150 bucks a semester. It just depends on your school. Other schools it might be a little bit cheaper. Some of the bigger schools you might pay $800 or $900 a year for the privilege to park on campus. And the College Board reported that in 2017-2018, the private colleges were charging an average of $2,730 for parking, and the public universities were charging about $3,200 a year for all the parking expenses. So that's significant to look at when you break it down. So there's different options. A lot of schools will offer shuttle buses, some of the larger campuses, so you can actually take the shuttle bus for free. Now, if you live on campus, you might not need a car. You can maybe get around on a bicycle or a skateboard or ride share or walk or scooter. These e-scooters are popular now. So there might be an opportunity for you to save on those parking expenses if you're living close to campus and you don't need a car. You can obviously bum rides from friends as well. But those are some expenses that you need to look at. Now, when we total up all four of these expenses that I just reviewed, so in review we'll say tuition and fees, housing and meals, books and school supplies, personal and transportation expenses. When you put those all together and total them up, you're looking at about $25,290 a year on the public side. So if you're going to go to a public in-state school, and if you do that for 4 years, if you're fortunate to get your degree in 4 years, you're looking at over $100,000, $101,000. So these are expenses that you need to plan for, take into account for, try to figure out how you can minimize or avoid some of the expenses when you are planning to go to college. So I hope this information was helpful and you learned something from it. And to learn more about how to avoid student loan debt, check out my book, It Is Possible. I'll link that in the description below. You can learn more about my book on my website as well, which is yourmarginmatters.com. And if you'd like to support me, please consider subscribing to my channel. I would very much appreciate it. But until next time, this is Jason Brown saying to remember, it's not the amount of money you make, but the margin that matters the most. See you next time.